Hello divers, welcome to The Waterman. I'm your instructor Alex. Today I want to talk about how much it costs to scuba dive. How much is it to get certified? What does it cost to continue diving once you're certified? These are two of the most common questions I get from non-scuba divers. I think there's kind of a misconception out there that scuba diving is only a rich guy sport. It's only wealthy people that can afford it. That's not entirely accurate. While there are very exotic dive destinations that can cost a pretty penny in airfare and transportation, there's definitely options to go scuba diving on a poor man's budget. You're looking at a poor man who dives on average of 6 times a week. So I'm gonna break this video down into 3 different categories: educational expenses, equipment expenses, and travel expenses. So let's start with education, because if you want to scuba dive, the first thing you need to do is invest in getting your open water certification. Not including travel expenses, getting certified alone typically runs between $500 and $1,000, depending on where in the world you plan on doing it and with what agency. To give you an example, my shop, Dive and Surf in Redondo Beach, charges $900 for your PADI open water certification course, and that's going to include all your equipment rentals, all boat fees, all the course materials from PADI, everything that you're gonna need. Remember, when shopping for your open water course, you get what you pay for. Scuba diving is only as safe as divers make it, just like aviation. So when you get on a plane, you probably would hope that the pilot, when training, aspired to be the best pilot he could be, not save as much money and look for an instructor that was the most lax on standards and course requirements so he could get through and become a pilot easier. So don't cheap out on your open water certification. The most important thing to consider when shopping around is the instructor. So now, once you're certified, there's no annual renewal fee. Your certification is good for life. But I do want to stress that even though your certification is good for life, if you've gone more than 6 months without a dive, you should absolutely do a refresher course, and that typically costs no more than $200. So as you can see, getting certified, maintaining your certification isn't very expensive. Now, after you're certified, what does it cost to go on a dive and continue diving? Now, this is where equipment and transportation costs come in. So transportation is going to be broken down into 2 categories in this video. If you do not live by the ocean or in an area that has some kind of diving destination, then more than likely you're going to have to spend money on airfare, or maybe you're traveling by a cruise line or whatever. The price for airfare or tickets onto the cruise really depend on where you're going, where you're coming from. So I can't really give you a fixed number for, you know, what that's going to look like, but you can compare the expenses with any other vacation you might go on. So needless to say, if you live in an area that is a diving destination, you'll have a significantly easier time getting in the water and diving without spending a fortune, because you don't have to spend any money on airfare or your typical vacation travel expenses. So the only thing you're going to have to spend money on is, you know, besides basic transportation, is boat fees to take you from the shore to the dive site. Typically, that's going to run you about $200 for 3 dives. If you would like an instructor, a dive master to guide you and your group, then figure, you know, about $100 split between you and your buddies. So now, you do not have to dive off a boat. Depending on where you are, there can be some really amazing shore entry dives. Shore entry meaning dive sites that are accessible from the shore or the beach. You just walk into the water with your gear and go diving. It's just $5 for an airfill. That's assuming you own your own equipment. Now let's talk about equipment. Equipment expenses. So there's a huge range on how much you can spend on dive gear. Let's start with rental fees, because typically that's how you're going to start. A full set of scuba gear rents anywhere from $30 to $60, depending on where you are, how nice the gear is that you're renting. Now, keep in mind, this is rate per a day, not per a dive. So what about the cost to purchase scuba gear? How much is a full kit? How much diving would I need to do for that gear to pay for itself? And how much maintenance and how often is that required? For a good, reliable full set of scuba gear, figure right around $2,000 if you take advantage of bundles and sales, and about $100 every year or 2 for maintenance. And while that is less expensive entry-level equipment than what, like, you know, somebody like me has, it's still equipment I would put my own mom and dad in and be comfortable that it's reliable and not going to kill them. This regulator I'll put in the video right here is it's from the rental department. My dad actually has the exact same one. I would describe this as the Toyota Corolla of regulators. It's not very expensive, but nothing's going to go wrong with it at all. Is it the same driving experience as like a Mercedes or a Porsche? No, certainly not, but it gets you from point A to point B. It's a third the cost of a Mercedes or a Porsche, and overall, it's much simpler and better for a new driver that is still learning. Expensive regulators are no more likely to fail than cheaper, inexpensive regulators. However, fancy regulators might have some airflow adjustment that a beginner diver really isn't going to realize and appreciate the value of. And in reality, it's just something else that you're adding for a beginner diver to think about when they still need to just be focused on getting dives under their belt and refining skills from their open water course until the basics really become second nature. At that time, when a fancy regulator is added, they'll have the attention span to play around with it and appreciate the value of the ability to adjust the airflow. So I say all this because, as I mentioned, figure about $2,000 for a full set of scuba gear that you would feel comfortable literally betting your own life on. But the sky is the limit as far as how nice and fancy your gear can be. For example, my regulator alone retails for $2,000. The total cost, retail price for my kit is about $8,000, almost $11,000 if you include my dry suit. Now that does include my 3 high pressure steel tanks that I own. And tanks are typically the last thing people buy, as you're always going to need to go to the shop anyway to get them filled, so a lot of people don't mind continuing to rent that item because they're heavy, bulky, they're difficult to store, and it's the one thing besides your weights that you're not going to travel with. Even if you own them, you're just going to leave them behind. Now, considering the $8,000 price tag of my kit, keep in mind, I'm an instructor, so that means 2 things. One, I'm affiliated with Dive and Surf, as you know, and they take really great care of us dive masters and us instructors. They give us a great deal on gear to help us out. So the other thing to keep in mind is that it makes sense for someone like me to invest in the best tools available to do my job. If you're a serious automotive technician, your toolbox is filled with top-of-the-line Snap-on branded tools. You don't bother wasting money on a cheap set of Craftsman wrenches from Home Depot. The counter to that is, if you're not an automotive technician, you're probably not going to notice how much nicer a set of Snap-on brand wrenches are versus a set of Craftsman brand wrenches from Home Depot. You're only going to use that set of wrenches probably a handful of times throughout each year. So purchasing Snap-on wrenches would be a waste of resources for you that could have been spent on something more important in your life. The same thing can sort of apply to scuba gear. I do believe in the philosophy buy once, cry once. So if you know that you're hooked on diving and without a doubt are going to continue to dive as much as possible for the rest of your life, I totally support buying top-of-the-line gear, even if it's the first set of gear you own. Just so long as you have the adequate experience under your belt that will allow you to make an informed decision as to what gear is best for you and best for the kind of diving you plan on doing. To give you an example, my regulator, the Atomic T3 that retails for $2,000, the reason for the T3 being so expensive is that it's made out of titanium and it's the world's lightest regulator on the market. I knew that I wanted to use this regulator on about a daily basis for my advanced recreational diving, and also I liked how convenient it is to travel with given its lightweight. However, because it's made out of titanium, you can't use an air mixture that's higher than 40% oxygen because of the risk of the titanium sparking when bumped against another piece of metal and potentially igniting the oxygen. But that's fine for me because I don't plan on using this regulator for any technical diving. That's what my XTX 50 and Deep 6 are for. So let's summarize everything we've covered in this video. Cost to get certified and get into scuba diving, under $1,000. To rent a full set of gear is about $30 to $50, and to buy a full set at the minimum is going to cost you about $2,000. How much is it going to cost to continue diving after depends on where you live, where you plan on going diving, and how much you plan on diving. If you want to do lots of lobster diving off the shore, that costs almost nothing once you're certified and own a full set of gear. It's only a $5 air fill at that point. But if you hate shore entries and only want to dive off a boat, it's going to cost you at least $100 to go out every time. If you don't live in an area that is a dive destination, then you're going to also need to account for your typical travel expenses. maybe you already go on a couple vacations a year and you're just looking to incorporate diving into those vacations. In that case, it's probably not worth purchasing a full set of gear, maybe some gear. You should just continue to rent, but it's absolutely worth getting certified. In my opinion, even if you never planned on diving again after getting certified, I still think it's worth the experience the open water class offers is worth every penny. The first time you dive, something inside you changes, I believe, on a physiological level. The same way falling in love or the birth of your child is this incredible event in your life that changes your brain chemistry. I personally put scuba diving right up there on that level with those kind of experiences. Everyone's life comes with a death sentence, and having the opportunity to visit and connect with the ocean and its inhabitants before your time here on Earth is up truly is a privilege beyond words, beyond description, and certainly that's something that's not financially quantifiable. So, and I think that would be kind of a good place to end this video. So thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and don't forget to leave me a comment with some feedback and let me know if there's anything specific I can review or demonstrate to help you guys out. See you next week. Thanks so much.